How long without rain qualifies as a drought? What are the types of droughts? How could this impact your story? What did the ground swallow? Find out on this episode. Welcome to Ride and Roll with Allie. I'm Allie, and this is episode number 34, Droughts. This month I have teamed up with Elizabeth Jacobson, the author of Not by Sight, a biblical retelling of the story of Joseph. In honor of her double nomination for the Carol Awards, this month episodes are all inspired by her book. I will leave links to all of her stuff in the show notes. Now let's get into this. Droughts are a natural disaster that affect every area of the planet. They are defined as extended periods of time with unusually low or no rain or other precipitation. This can be tricky to determine, as not every place will have the same amount of annual rainfall. For example, Death Valley gets 2.2 inches of rain, while the state of Louisiana annually receives 60.09 inches of rain. If Death Valley received 2.3 inches of rain in a year, it would be considered above average. If Louisiana received the same amount, it would be considered an extreme drought. This means droughts cannot be defined by a specific rainfall amount. So, how is it determined? I'm glad you asked. Or I asked for you. To fully understand this, we will need to look at two factors: types of droughts and stages of droughts. Types of droughts are defined by the effects the drought is having, and the stages are determined by how long there has been precipitation deficiencies and what effects are happening. Droughts happen all over the world and have since the beginning of mankind. They are natural phenomenons and cannot be prevented. They're not even always predictable, such as Europe's mega drought in 1540. The heat was extreme in those years, and not even modern climate models could predict it when it had over 1,000 years of data. There is also something called a snow drought. Many places, especially those at the bottoms of mountains, rely on the snow that they get in the winter. It melts as the weather gets warmer, providing them with water. When the snow melts, it comes down the mountain, keeping the rivers and streams flowing. This could be important for many things, such as flour mills in history, for cattle, or even for water to drink. Now let's get into the types of droughts that you will encounter. Number 1, meteorological drought, when dry weather patterns dominate an area. Number 2, hydrological drought, when low water supplies becomes evident in the water system. Number 3, agricultural drought, when crops become affected by drought. Number 4, socioeconomical droughts, when the supply and demand of various commodities are affected by drought. Number 5, ecological drought, when natural ecosystems are affected by drought. The next thing to know is the stages of drought. First is abnormally dry conditions, abbreviated as D0. This is pre-drought stage. It doesn't mean that there will definitely be a drought, but it is more likely. In this stage, there are several weeks of dry weather, and it is starting to slow the growth of crops. Basically, I have defined summer, at least in most of the places that I have lived. The next stage is moderate drought, abbreviated as D1. At this stage, grass and lawns are brown, crops are stunted, and planting new crops has been delayed. Wildfire risks increase. Fish are stressed. I don't know what that means, but they might need to talk to someone. Just not me. My family will think I have lost my ever-loving mind. Stage 3 is abbreviated as D2, and this is called the severe drought. This usually comes after weeks of moderate drought. Crop loss is likely. Water shortages are common in this stage. Fish start to die. Wildlife moves or migrates to wherever they can find water or food. In some cases, that is close to farms, and in other cases, they leave the area. The next is extreme droughts, abbreviated as D3. In this stage, significant crop loss is expected. Pasture land loss is also likely. People start to dig deeper wells as their wells go dry. Wildlife can have disease outbreaks. Water restrictions are typically put into place at this point. Many western states here in the U.S. imposed these restrictions in 2022. Up last is the exceptional drought, abbreviated as D4. This is the rarest type. Widespread crop and pasture land failure. Forests turn into tinderboxes for forest fires. Water must be conserved no matter the era you are riding, because water will run out if you do not. That said, it can be shipped in a modern story. What do droughts look and feel like? I'm glad you asked. Hot, dry, and dusty are the most common answers. Some others are that vegetation dies, and what lives turns brown. Pond, streams, ditches, riverbeds, and even wells can dry up. In the mega drought in Europe in 1540, it was recorded that the ground was so dry it reflected the heat even in the middle of winter. Once the ground has been dry long enough, it will start to form cracks. There are records in history of the cracks being large enough for a grown man's leg to fall into. This is big enough that it could be dangerous to many animals, and it is also big enough that children could potentially fall into the cracks. A few years ago, we had a drought and our cracks were big enough that my wrist could fit into them, and they went down a few feet in some places. I had an irrational fear of snakes were crawling through them. This is actually entirely possible. Many plants have adapted for droughts. While annual plants will likely die off, many others will not. Yucca plants have deep root systems. Juniper trees conserve water by sending water only to the branches needed for survival. Many plants' seeds can survive underground for years until the rain picks back up. However, people will adapt and do what they must to survive. Some of the ways that they do this is by trying to make the most of the water they have. They will either have irrigation or will have to haul the water to the garden. Some of the ways they held water in the ground were by mulch, wood shavings, straw, dead leaves, and other things like this. An oilless or oily, however you pronounce it, have been around since ancient times. These are unglazed clay jars. If you are wondering what they are the brownish planters that you find in almost every gardening section. They are buried in the ground close to the plants. This type of jar will slowly leach water into the dirt, watering the plants slowly. They are best used with a lid, but it won't have to be a lid made specifically for the jar. It just needs to be something that will go over the top and stop water evaporation. It is best to dig them up every year and move them around. The reason is that plant roots will grow around and sometimes into the jars. It is best to move them every planting season to keep them from breaking. Oilies are still used today. Some people get creative and put plants close together to help the other plants with nutrients. The most well-known in the United States is what the Cherokees called the Three Sisters. These are corn, beans, and squash. These plants nurture each other in the soil. Also, the beans will grow up the corn plant like a trellis, and the squash will grow along the ground, and the leaves will help to naturally retain the water. This is also less space to water, instead of three separate places that they had to water. This technique is about water going as far as it can with conservation. It is not a technique to stop the type of land erosion that happened during the American Dust Bowl. This is a drought that was made especially worse by the natural foliage that had deep root systems being removed and replaced with vast croplands. To top that off, there was a lot of logging done and no windbreaks. This escalated into giant dust storms that killed animals and in some cases, people. In a modern and a post-apocalyptic story, bottom watering would be a choice. This is when water is piped below ground into a watering system that the roots grow down to. It might run off rain collection in good years, but in dry years, the water might have to be hauled into the system. These are often PVC pipes with holes drilled at specific intervals, but there are other ways too. Feel free to check out that Pinterest bunny hole. There are some other things that could potentially happen to the land during bad droughts. There is a chance of wildfires. This occurred in 1988 in Yellowstone National Park when a lightning storm caused 36% of the park to burn. In 2018, Northern California had the most destructive and deadly fire in California history. The fire is referred to as Camp Fire. It traveled extremely fast, pushed by high winds, and burned down the town of Paradise, California. 153,336 acres burned, 85 people died, and several citizens and firefighters were injured. More than 18,000 structures burned in only 4 hours. While wildfires can be deadly, there are a few upsides to wildfires. The ash from the fire will add nutrients to the soil, making it better for the next year. Also, some trees like the lodgepole pine release seeds when the fire comes, which is how they multiply. Droughts can happen anywhere in the world and should be a possibility in fantasy stories. Well, they can happen in a lot of stories regardless of the genre. They affect people, plants, and animals. No one is safe from droughts, and they do not play favoritisms between people. However, humans have lived with them since the beginning and have learned to adapt as needed. Fun fact! Honey ants adapt to deserts by having some ants engorge themselves on nectar until their bellies are swollen. They are like little living storage containers. When droughts or famines come, these storage ants will regurgitate the nectar for the other ants. Now for everyone's favorite part. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let me tell you. Likely to go wrong. Your character is a farmer and their crops fail. That means there is no income that year. While there is help for the modern farmer, at least here in America, there was not in history, and there is unlikely to be after the zombie apocalypse. Also likely to go wrong, your character runs out of water and has to haul water from a place that requires a very long walk. Possible to go wrong, your character is a fisherman, and when the streams dry up, they lose their livelihood. Also possible to go wrong, when high winds kick up during a drought, your character could find themselves in the middle of a dust storm. Also possible to go wrong, there is a lightning storm, and it starts a wildfire. Your character might have to abandon their home and run for their life. Also unlikely to go wrong, the drought is so bad your character or characters are forced to move or migrate, or they will die because there is nothing to eat or drink. Improbable, but still technically in their own possibilities. Your character is a hero when they find a way to use an aqueduct to bring water in from a far-off place during a drought. It would likely be a massive project even by today's standards, but it could save many. Also improbable, but still technically in their own possibilities. A small child falls into the crack in the ground and gets stuck. Someone will need to dig them out, or this could potentially be deadly. You can find this episode's show notes and helpful links to learn more on my website, AlleyHart.com. That's ALLEYHART.com. Check out the show notes to find contacts for Elizabeth and her book, Not by Sight. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and follow for more episodes. Connect on my YouTube videos by dropping me a comment. A new episode comes out every Monday. Until then, happy wordsmithing.